I am ready. You can sing, Howard. I like that pitch. Anyway, welcome everybody to the what month are we in? June. Thank you, June. Our monthly meeting. My name is George Dado. I'm president of the CCBA. Welcome to anybody this is their first meeting, and welcome to the CCBA. This is your guys' club. We have 600 members. We have one of the largest county clubs probably in the country. Lots of beekeepers, lots of bees, and I'm preaching to the choir, to the percent of membership that's here that really wants to do this the right way and educate the public and be better beekeepers. So thank you for coming. Those of you who aren't here, get your act together. No, sorry, I didn't say that. Anyway, quick introductions of some people around the room. Today we have Vice President Donna, VP1 Donna is right there. She does all the meeting organization and planning. Lynn is not here. Mark is VP, Chief Techno Bee or Bee Geek. He does all the technology. Mark Metters. So all the Zoom stuff, everything electronic, he does. Our secretaries are Carissa and Russ. Neither one of them are here. Our treasurers, we have both our treasurers here. We have Howard, who's treasurer 1, and we have Chris, who volunteered a couple meetings ago by raising his hands for treasurer 2. And yeah, he's like, dude, you'll learn, like, dude, keep your hands in your pockets when you come to the bee club meetings. It's the safest way to be. And then we have a bunch of committee leads here. A lot of the work gets done through committee, and of course we have Patrick and Stephanie sitting right up front here who do the coffee and the donuts every month. So please. And anybody who brought stuff for the raffle, I did contribute an item today. I have this raspberry lemonade creamed honey. So if you feel free to take that. Anyway, so thank you to those who bring. Lynn's online. So again, welcome everybody. That's a high-level introduction to the leadership. Please get involved, right? Get involved in something. We have the picnic coming up, right? Next month, there is no meeting. So we won't be here listening to me blabber. We'll be having fun at the East Goshen Township Park with the summer picnic. We've been doing the summer picnic forever, ever since 15 years that I've been in this club, and we're continuing to do it. That's being led by Monica. Monica needs help. She won't say it, but I'll say it. Monica needs help. So simple things. Like, it's great that people show up, and it's great that if you bring a side, but if you can help Monica maybe pick up some chicken or pick up some hot dogs or work the grill or help do something. So you all know Monica. Monica's going to raise her hand. Light the charcoal. Today. Okay. So, all it will take is probably 30 minutes of your time, honestly. So please sign up. I didn't know Monica was bringing a volunteer list, but that's great, Monica. And there's probably a lot of other important stuff I'm not mentioning right now, but I'm going to skip over it. The bees. It's been sort of a tough May, right? For those of us who have been beekeeping for a while, this May was a little bit different than most Mays, especially the recent Mays. We had a lot more cool weather. We had a lot more rainy weather, and therefore the nectar flow was not as strong, and it's also taking a little bit longer to cap the honey to extract. So we're all excited about extracting and making some honey, but please watch your moisture levels this year, right? They seem to be running higher than normal, and if your moisture level is over 18.5% and you don't consume your honey in the first month or two, it's likely to ferment, right? And there's probably people out there that like fermented honey, but yeah, add more water and call it mead, yes, and a little more sugar and keep the process going. Anyway, so June, we're going to talk about mites because everyone needs to know about mites, but June is split month, right? So what you're thinking about in June is May. If you're thinking about making splits over winter nukes, June is the time to make them if you haven't made them already with swarm cells or other things. So June's a great month. You want to do it before July because it seems like those made July after maybe don't survive as well in the winter as those that made earlier. We won't go into details, but that's just my experience. So think about how many hives you want next year, right? And you want to go into winter with about 20 to 30% more than that, right? So if you want 3 hives next year, have a 4th going into winter, right? If you want 100 hives next year, have 120 going into winter, because everybody loses some hives through winter, even with what we're going to hear about today, even with mite management, right? Mite management is key to winter survival. But even if you do adequate mite management, there are other things that cause bees to die through the winter. Not feeding them, queen issues, just weak population. So 20%. So think about making your overwinter nuke. Yes, you can overwinter in a nuke box. You don't need to get that nuke into a 10 frame to overwinter. You can keep it in a nuke box. That's all I have to say about overwintered nukes. And June is split month. So there's 3 things you're going to be doing in June. Hopefully harvesting some honey, even if it's a frame or 2. You know, some of us don't need 1,000 pounds of honey. Some of us are happy with, 10 pounds of honey to have for yourself and give to your friends, So don't be afraid to extract a frame or 2, even if you don't have much, just for yourself. So extract honey, make sure the moisture content's low, make splits, and have some idea. We're going to talk about mites. Have some idea what you're going to do for mites. If you wait, well, we're not going to get into that, but have some idea what you're going to do for mites. If your idea is to do nothing, that's fine, but just have that commitment as an idea, right? And know how to do that. Don't go in without an idea. Okay, so there's 4 things. I'm probably up on my 10 minutes, but I want to review the 4 things really quick that helps your bees survive year after year. Number 1 is colony size to hive size, right? So your colony should take up 70 to 80% of your hive, size-wise. So if your bees, and the population of bees is not getting any higher at this point. The only thing that's going to happen at this point is your population is going to go down, unless you are artificially feeding them all summer long, which I'm not saying there's a right and wrong in beekeeping, right? But I don't know why you do that, but if you wanted to do that, you could always push your queen, right? If you continue to feed your queen sugar syrup, you're going to continue to push her. And there may be reasons why you want to do that over the summer, but generally, early June is your peak population of bees, and it's only going to go down at this point. So at this point, if your supers are capped, pull them off, If your bees swarm, then you still have a double deep and 2 mediums, and you have like 5 frames of bees, pull them down to a single deep. Just make your colony size to your hive size match for the most part. If you don't, you're going to have beetle problems. If you don't, and then you're going to lose your hive. Number 2 is, I should know these. I made them up myself. Know if you're queen right? You got to do your brood inspections. You got to know if you're queen right or not. Obviously, you should be able to identify young eggs and larvae. A lot of us take that for granted, honestly, but if you don't know how to do that yet, ask around, practice, right? Keep looking in your hive, get a magnifying glass, get your phone, take a picture of your cells, blow it up. You'll be able to see it. You want to recognize if you're queenless. Some of us are queenless right now because of swarming, right? Because your bees swarm sometime in May, you're waiting for the new queen to get back. Generally, patience is a good thing in that scenario. I would at least wait until all the brood is hatched out before you call yourself queenless. If all your brood is hatched out and you wait a week after that and you don't see any eggs and larvae, you better start thinking about, either getting a queen from somewhere or getting a frame of brood from another hive or 2 frames of brood from another hive and putting it in there. I'm not going to go into details, but you don't want to let a queenless hive go too long, right? Because what happens? Laying workers, right? And laying workers is very difficult to fix, right? So know if you're queenless. Rule number 3 is feed when necessary, right? Feed when necessary. And you have to think about this time of year when you're harvesting honey. Bees need some food source to survive, right? So especially those of us running single deeps, right? If you run single deeps and you remove all the supers above the queen excluder, what's left as far as food in that hive? Nada. Nada. Especially on really strong hives, right? There are hives that you run in single deeps. Every single frame in that single deep will be full of brood, and none of the stores will be down there. They'll have the stores above the excluder. So you always want to leave 30 pounds or so of honey in a hive post post-harvest. You know, do not harvest and leave your bees with 10 pounds of honey and a big population of bees. They will be stressed. They may not die, but a lot of them will die, whatever. You get the idea. So be responsible about how you're harvesting honey and make sure you're leaving 30 or 40 pounds for the bees. At least, and that's not going into winter. That's just surviving the summer because we don't know what July is going to have, right? We have no idea. The weather people don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. I mean, July and August, we could have no rain and there be no nectar production at all, right? And then the bees are only living off what's in the hive, right? Or there's some rain and we get the clover's beautiful and we get sunflowers and whatever else is out there, and then the bees continue to have some food. But leave 30 or 40 pounds for the bees post-harvest. Number 4 is know your mite count. You know, we're going to talk about this in a second. Know your mite count. If you don't have a mite washer, please buy a mite washer. Think about that. It's not hard to do. Know your mite count, especially this time of year. If you're a universal treatment person, me included in that, and we'll get to that. I probably still should know my mite counts, honestly, right? Because you know, not especially on hives that I'm not sure about, you know, and that comes with experience. You know, for those of us who are really experienced, can look at a hive and tell you whether or not it's healthy. If it's not healthy, if it looks questionable, do a mite count on that hive, and then treat and then retest, right? Because there's resistance out there. Not all mite treatments work, so you want to retest. So anyway, I'm not going to get into that. So they're the 4 things: hive size, the colony size, know if you're queen right. Feed if necessary, and know your mite count. And I've gone over my 10 minutes. I'm going to turn the floor over to Donna or Mark, who's running the meeting.
If you have a question, speakers, please repeat the question for online. If you have a long question or you're making a comment, wait for the mic to come to you. Chris has got one, and Monica's going to have one. She doesn't know this yet, but she knows it now.
But, you know, as Mark finished, this is your club. This is not my club. This is not the officers' club. You know, please get involved. Please come up to me and say, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or we need to be doing this. Paul came up to me today, and he says, we need to address something. I said, you're absolutely right, Paul. We need to address something. And I'm all for it, you know, but I need to hear, like, we need to address something, or we need this, or we need to do that. Please come and put it on the table, and we'll figure out how to do it. So with that said, I'm done, at least for now.
At this time, we usually take this moment to see if we've got any new members here today with us. Is everybody a returning member? Is anybody new? New member? First time here? Yeah? What's your name? Mike?
Yeah, Mike Ryan.
Mike Ryan. Hello, Mike. And is this your daughter? All right. Are you guys current beekeepers or becoming a beekeeper?
We've got a beehive last year, and somehow made it through it, and we still have some time.
Awesome, awesome. When did you become a member?
Last month,
Oh, good. Well, welcome. Awesome. And do you take care of the bees as well? Do you help your dad? Sort of. All right. All right. Awesome. And I think somebody behind you raised their hand as well. You're Mike too. Not two, but TOO too. All right. And you, do you have bees currently?
I got 3 hives going right now. This started like 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Awesome. Awesome. When did you become a member?
About a month ago.
About a month ago. Well, congrats. Where are you guys located?
I'm in West Grove.
West Grove. And where are you? Mike 1? Downtown. All right, good. Well, great. That's awesome to hear. Welcome, guys. Nobody else is new? Everybody else is returning? Awesome. So at this moment, I'm going to bring up Paul. Where is he? Paul? There he is, Paul. And Paul's going to talk to us about the grants committee report.
I'm going to tell you about the grant recipients for this year, but many of you asking, what is a grant? So for the newcomers, CCBA has a grant program, and the board of directors decided About 4 years ago, I think 2021, we had the new formatted grant program. The idea is to give back to the community, and we decided to have 15% of our operating budget at the end of the year go to a grant program. So we're going to give money away. So we're a granting organization. And grants are available to be applied for January 1st of every year, and then the closing period is April 1st. They're awarded on a competitive basis, and they shall be for no more than $1,500 a grant. And you can give a lesser, we can give a lesser amount if we want. They need to meet the objectives of the CCBA, and they are to assist members in the art and science of beekeeping, including sharing effective techniques, coping with problems, meeting challenges, supporting each other. To educate members and encourage compliance with laws pertaining to beekeeping. To promulgate information to the public about beekeeping and the valuable role of honeybees and other pollinators in nature and agriculture, and to encourage more people to become involved in beekeeping. So those are the objectives of the grant program. That's the objectives of the CCBA, and we want the grant applications to meet those objectives. Applicants must not be CCBA members or close relatives, because we're a 501c3 organization, and that prohibits a party in our organization from realizing gain through their membership. And that's about it. So that's the grant program. And now I'm going to talk about the grant recipients for this year. Okay, would you just type this up? All right. So the first people up there are Camp Hill Solitaire. This camp provides inclusive setting for achieving creative development, clinical therapy, and meaningful employment for adults with intellectual differences, and also extends to the broader community. So what they wanted was to upgrade their meadow to remove invasive plants, to replant native flora, and to increase the number of hives by adding 3 nukes. And they plan to extract honey on site to further engage with the community. So we decided that was a worthwhile effort, and we awarded them $1,500. So the next one is the Historic Grange Estate. This is a place that has an apiary. They keep bees for educational activities. They have classes of students that visit the hive. They go out and talk to schools, churches, libraries, etc. The public is invited to observe, and they have and participate in the honey extractions every summer. They were seeking a fence to protect the apiary, and the total cost of that was $2,900, and we gave them $1,500. Next is Jenkins Arboretum. You know Jenkins Arboretum in Devon. It's a famous famous for its plants, for its ponds, and for its pollinator plantings. They have a lot of space. They have shaded woodland gardens, soaring canopies of native trees, and buzzing sweeps of pollinator plants. Their words. So we've given money to them in the past. They've expanded their pollinator plantings. They have a pollinator garden. They have another one down by the pond. And this year they had storm damage to an area down by the stream walk. So they're replanting that in pollinator-friendly plants down along the stream walk. Their projected cost is about $2,000 for this project, and we gave them $1,500. Next is the Garage Youth Center in Avondale. They serve about 392 students at this community center, and their vision is to create a pollinator garden. They want to have a garden to attract all kinds of pollinators, honeybees, hummingbirds, butterflies, and moths. So their mission is simply to create a pollinator garden for the community and engage the youth and the community on the importance of pollinators in our lives. Significantly, they had also received a community grant from our state representative, Chrissy Houlihan's office, who gave them a grant to physically make the garden, which is right now concrete, or initially was concrete. So they're going to bust up the concrete, make raised beds, add soil, use mulch, and we are providing plants. They asked for about $1,200, and we gave them $15,000. We thought it was $1,500. We thought it was a very worthwhile endeavor. Next is Gary and Kathy Sheridan. So the four that I've just talked about are organizations. So this one is going to a private citizens. Kathy and Gary Sheridan own 32 acres of land in Downingtown, and it's bisected by a natural gas pipeline. So the pipeline right of way is an open meadow, and they have consulted with the pipeline right of way and agreed to not clear cut it, but they want to plant a pollinator meadow. So they wanted to plant 42 lavender plants in a 400 square foot pollinator meadow located at the beehives on their property. And the beehives are owned by a CCB member, Extract and Box. They've already purchased $500 worth of native sunflowers, butterfly, milkweed, wild bergamot, swamp milkweed, budelia, and 110 varieties of non-invasive daylilies. So they wanted $1,500, and actually their next door neighbors, Linda and Stephen Farrell, are also along that right of way. They also wanted the same 42 lavender plants and other pollinator plant meadow mix in this 400 square foot pollinator meadow next to the beehives on their property, which are also owned by Tim Ferriss. So they wanted $1,500 each, and the board decided that this was not a conflict of interest, and they decided to award these grants. But because we were running out of money, the last two only got $950. So that brings our total award for this year to $7,900. It's the biggest year we ever had for giving out grants. And we probably met our we probably doubled or equaled our previous applications, the history of our previous applications.
Thanks, Paul. Just really quick to just Paul mentioned, but the grant program opens up January 1st of every year. Applications are January through April. It is a competitive process. I don't think we awarded all the grants that came in this year. And the people that do get the money are required to submit statuses of their project. So thank you all to being part of the CCBA, and thank you to Paul for keeping that organized and on track this year. So good job. That's all I got to say about grants. If anybody'd like to donate large amounts of money, we'd be more than happy to help you put it in appropriate hands. So that's it.
So anybody come to last month's meeting? Yeah. So I did the presentation on my laying worker hive. Since that time, I merged them. So I'm going to do a follow-up presentation on what has happened. I'm going to give you some back history on the hives and how I got to where I was. There's Yasmin. Yasmin has been helping me with my hive since about April. And I thought you weren't going to show up. I'm thinking, I asked her to come to the front. She's like, no way. So I'm like, you know what? The way that she's not going to come to the front is she's just not going to show up. But she did show up. So a little bit of back history. I had 6 hives going into winter. I had 4 10-frame hives and 2 nukes. Coming out of winter, and you guys saw my, what was it? My autopsy. Did you guys watch my autopsy? So I showed one of the hives and what happened. Coming out of winter, I had 2 10-frame hives. I don't think the next frame explains it, so I'm going to say what happened. The green box on the right was queen right. The one on the left didn't have a queen. I now think that it may have swarmed or something. And maybe she was a virgin queen and I just didn't see her, but I did check a couple other weeks after that and never found her. So in a hurry, I'm just going to tell you all my mistakes. In a hurry, I thought, you know what? All I really need are some eggs. If they've got eggs, they'll make a queen. So I took the queen out of the green box, put it in the other box without letting her acclimate. And sure enough, the next time I looked, she was gone as well. So at that point, I had to figure out what to do. Is that the next one? Yeah. I had to figure out what to do. And at that point, I had now 2 hives with no queen. So I needed a queen. So on the morning of, is Janet here? Janet said she was coming. Janet's not here. On the morning of April 8th, Russ had gone out to Chicago and needed help looking at his hives. In the process, I asked him if I could get some brood, eggs specifically, to possibly put in my hives, and he was okay with that. Shot these pictures on the way back of the eclipse driving home. Got home, and the 2 hives were put together into the green box, and I put Russ's brood and eggs in that and thought, fingers crossed, girls make a queen. The next day, you can just go to the next frame. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. There's a lot of. So if you look back at the date when I got those frames from Russ to when I got that, I'm now thinking that they didn't make that in my hive. That queen cell might have been on the process because that was 6 days after I put it in my hive. I think that's too soon, right? No, they could have done that in 6 days. Okay. Well, then they did make it. And Russ and I really are the co-parents to that queen. Next frame, please. The next day after I saw that, I went to George's and I picked up 2 queens, one for me, one for Peggy. You can go to the next one. And George said, just get rid of, where's George? Because I want him to hear how, where is he? There. Yeah, he's talking. I want him to hear how I didn't listen to him. He's like, just get rid of the queen cell. Put the queen, the mated queen, in the box and just be done with it. And I'm like, I can't kill queens. I have never killed a queen. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the cell and put it in nuke 1, and I'm going to take the mated queen and put it in nuke 2. The April 28th in nuke 1, where the cell was, I observed her already making queens. However, what I did listen to George with is instead of splitting a 10 frame to 2 10 frames, I split my 10 frame to 2 5 frames. So essentially, I kind of did what he wanted. I kept it the same size, which is what he's big on. I didn't realize that was a video. This is me talking to George saying, I really don't want to do it your way. I want to do it my way. All right. That same afternoon, I got a call to go get a swarm from a friend that said it was down at the Fallcraft School. Mark helped me through this process because I had never captured a swarm before. So I got that swarm, put them in. I saw the queen. I held her. I put her in, but I didn't cage her, which was a lesson learned. Cage your queen, then put her in the box. Got the bees in at least as much as I could. You can go to the next frame. This is me talking to Mark. All right. So that became the Fallcraft swarm. I got it home. I never saw the queen. I don't know what happened to her. My guess is that she went back out of the box and went back to the tree, and I could never find her. 3 weeks from the time I got that home, it became a laying worker hive. Thank you to Yasmin, who noticed that and pointed that out to me. And this is the box that was eventually merged with nuke 1. Captured on 415 and doomed by 5/6. I did feed it eggs. I did give it frames of brood. I kept it, tried to get it to come back as much as I could, but it never made a queen. So it got to the point once it became a laying worker hive that I absolutely had to merge it. So you can go to the next frame. All right, so these are the notes I took. Yasmin said, I think you've got a laying worker. So you can see she and I keep very extensive notes of all the different hives. And this is the only reason I was able to make this presentation and have dates and have everything so organized, because I'm usually not this organized, but this is really helping me manage my hives. And then you find things like this. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, I don't really know what that is. So I said to Yasmin, I said, why did I write this? She's like, I have no idea. I'm like, huh, I wonder what I was thinking when I wrote that. Not sure what that means, but I thought I would leave that in for some humor. All right, let's go to the next one. This is the fall craft swarm. That's the only picture of it I have. And that one is the condo hive. We're going to have a little demonstration about that one later. When I decided to bring the purple box, the purple box is the laying worker hive. Generally, Yasmin said you just put that on top. And my fear was, well, if I put that on top and the queen and the brood are on the bottom, are they going to smell through the paper that far away? I was really afraid they wouldn't get the scent and that they would break through and never get acclimated before they went through. So I said, you know what? I want to put it right over the queen and right over the brood box. I really want them to get the scent. So I put only one layer of tissue paper between the top, what would have been a brood box, but there was no queen in there. I said, I don't really need to protect anything there, but I'm going to put 4 layers of tissue paper on the bottom. So that's what I did. And I waited, what was this? It was merged on the 13th. Oh, and then I noticed, I'm like, Yasmin, I don't have a top exit. There's no way for them to get out. I'm like, is that going to be a problem? Like, are they going to have like a dysentery problem in the box, not being able to get out and do their cleansing flight? And she's like, no, I think it'll be fine. So they basically had to chew through those 2 layers to get out and relieve themselves. All right, so let's go to the next one. So basically it was 5 days, 4 days, 4 days. So 4 days. And then this is what we found. You can go to the next one. They literally, this is the top. This is only 1 layer. They chewed through. We weren't really too surprised by that. You can go to, these are just pictures, Mark. That's still the top layer, just a closer one. That is now, that's still the top, right? Because that's the purple box. That's the top of the purple box. Go 1 more. This is now, you can see the purple one coming off, and that's the bottom. That's 4 layers of tissue paper. They like chewed through that in 4 days, clean. Absolutely, they had a perfect square in there. And I've got some pictures once I pulled out frames what the bottom of this hive looks like. You can go 1 more. And all the paper is still at the bottom, laying on the screen. So now we've got to go in here and we got to figure out, is there a queen? Did she survive? Is she alive? Is she doing what she's supposed to be doing? So this frame of brood, I'm assuming, was probably already there because they didn't do that in 4 days. Right, Cal? You're usually the one that nods her head and tells me whether I'm right or wrong. I said they didn't do that in 4 days. She didn't lay and cap that like that in 4 days. So that's the old brood is what I'm pretty sure. So how do I know it worked? I got eggs. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there are eggs. And then there's the queen. And she was marked yellow. Yeah. So once I saw that, I was like, oh, thank God. It is really, it's nerve wracking, especially after I purposely killed, well, I didn't purposely, but especially after I already killed the queen. I did 2 merges. So sometimes the results are going to be different. And here's a different result. This was newspaper. I finally found like some flyers of some like ads. And I believe, I don't remember what I did. Was it 1 or 2 layers, Yasmin? Was it 2 layers? So that's 2 layers of newspaper and they broke through, but it wasn't as clean as the tissue paper, 4 layers. And then the other thing I noticed, and Yasmin, you didn't point this out when you were looking through my slides, but I think that's 2 eggs. If like you can't tell here, but they hadn't corrected themselves yet. But they were laying, she was laying eggs, and that was another successful merge. So I do have 2 successful laying worker merges. And there is the queen from this hive. So there are only 2 slides from the other hive. This is the final. Where am I now? These are all 4 of my hives now. So those nukes, I'm not talking to you. Those nukes became 10 frame hives. And I heard George mention earlier, do splits. When Yasmin and I went in this past weekend, this is the queen cell, and this is the George's queen that he gave me. They were making queen cells, and this queen that I got from Russ, the cell they made, she's actually laying better than the queen that was purchased that George gave me. So I don't want to lose her. So Yasmin and I decided to make a split. So I made my split. One of the things I'm doing to kind of keep track, I think it's my last frame. One of the things that I'm kind of doing to keep track of everything I've got is I'm putting bricks up top and I'm just I've got on my inspection reports, all of my hives are named, like N1 for Nuke 1, H1, JM is Jeff Murphy here. Jeff Murphy gave me a swarm, so that's the JM. And then this is the split. So I'm just trying to keep track because sometimes I lose track of which hive is which. So that's my way of naming them in a non-permanent way. I can just move the bricks around. Okay. I do have to warn you, if anybody has a weak stomach, you probably want to go walk away now. So on 426, and this is that Fallcraft hive that was eventually became a laying worker hive that was merged. A week or so after I got, I think it was the next week, I think I have a video. Is that a video, Mark? Yeah. And this was just a text I sent to Yasmin. So I didn't know at that point if that swarm was like, screw you putting us in this little nuke. We're going over to that box because that's a lot bigger. So I opened it up that day, and what I found was a full colony. I found a queen. I found like 5 frames of top box had a little bit, the middle box had a little bit, and the bottom box was full of bees with a queen. I'm like, that's the easiest swarm I've ever caught. That's cool. But after that, when I went to the nuke, there was no queen. So I honestly, at that point, don't know where that queen came from. I took that hive and I reduced it to a 10-frame box. I left a stack of 2 on top of it so that those bees could come back and identify where they were since they were so new to that box. All right, so you can go on to the next one. And this is just kind of, all right. So once I noticed that there was a queen, but nothing was being laid, I added brood. Yasmin's like, you might want to feed them because technically they're like a swarm. So we added honey. 513, I looked in the hive and then I found no queen. Oh, I couldn't find her on 5.6, couldn't find her on 5.13, couldn't find her on 5.19. And I noticed I was starting to get small hive beetles. Yasmin said she remembers me pulling out the bottom board and torching them and getting rid of them. I didn't go in again until, no, 5:31, I put notes to self. Do I need to reduce this to a note? But I never did. So when did we go in? It was like, we did go in 5:31. Oh, and I was like, let's reduce this to a nuke. By that time, they'd absconded, and then this is what we found. I think these are videos, Marks. Yeah. No, I do not use this pan to cook with.
Good protein.
I'm going to say that this is nothing. I don't even know what to do with them now. I don't want them in my yard. I don't want them going anywhere. I don't want nobody to get the barbecues out. So I just want them dead. And that one might be a video too, and that's just them squirming around. All right, so we can go to the next one. That's where it gets really good. It is breezy. All right, this is my bottom board, and this is a video. So it's just, oh, and it gets better. At this point, so I was going to just torch them on my pan until I saw the bottom board. And then you can go to the next frame. I mean, I realized I might not have enough propane to get rid of all of these. So I said, let me light the fire pit. I lit the fire pit. Now there's no volume, right? I took the volume off because there's nothing but Yasmin going, what the bleep? Oh my bleep! Oh my God, what the bleep? What the bleeping bleep? And I'm like, I cannot play the volume, but this is really entertaining. So we put him in the fire. We went back. We cleaned out the hive. It took us a while. We came back an hour later. I put the tongs in there. I said, let me just make sure they're dead. And that's what I found. That's how close I couldn't even hold the camera there. It was so hot to my hand. It was burning my hand, but yet there they are surviving. And then just watch this. They're just like bubbling out of the dirt. This doesn't even do it justice. I mean, you should see that when it's not a white. It was crazy. Anyway, and now everybody go have a snack. So yeah, so when George says size matters, reduce your box, he's not kidding. And make sure you have a queen.
As vice president of the PA State Association, sorry about this, Donna.
No big deal.
It's good to be president. I will get smacked later for this, but I'm going to give Frank the floor for 3 minutes. Frank Witkowski, as you all know, he's a member of the Chester County Beekeepers Association, but he's also vice president of the state association. So he's here to comment a few words about the state. Do I need a comment? Just use it.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, in that view.
Great, thanks, George. A few things from, I'm the vice president of the State Beekeeper Association. We are having our summer picnic, the state summer picnic on July 20th at Knoebels. If anybody wants to go, very family friendly. The organization provides the food, the drinks. We ask people to bring a covered dish if they want to, or a dessert. And information about that is on the State Beekeepers website, if you look it up. We have about 1,800 members. If anybody is not a member and wants to become a member, it's $20. And one of the benefits is the newsletter. It provides information from all over the state. The Pennsylvania Plant and Pollinator Protection Act is a new law that was introduced last month, and there's information on the state website about that. It's positioned to supersede the existing law, which is also on the state website. If anybody wants to look at the laws and provide feedback, the state beekeeping organization supports the new law. It's meant to get ahead for us to be ahead of new potential threats, which are most likely going to happen. Things like triple lapse, which is not here yet. Yellow-legged hornets, which are in the States, are in Georgia, outside Savannah. They're trying to get rid of them, but it's a tough battle. One other thing is, my family and I are going on vacation this week, and I have extra queens. I brought them with me if anybody needs queens. The only downside is they're in JZBZ cages without attendants. So if anybody needs queens, see me in the next hour. And the Phillies play in London this weekend. That's all I got.
Great. So I posted a copy of the new bee law on the CCBA Facebook forum site, but I hear it's on the state site. Whether or not, as an organization, association, we want to collectively comment on this, or whether or not we want to leave it up to the individuals to comment to your representatives, I don't know. I'm not a very politically connected person, but I have my own thoughts about this, and I'm sure a lot of you do too, and I think we should somehow share them, because that's part of the process of living in America, right? So with that said, however, I can be supportive of anybody or of the association itself. I'm more than happy to do so, but I will not be leading the response back if we decide to make a response. So if anybody wants to raise their hand and volunteer to kind of create something, feel free. We're going to talk about Varroa now, okay? I think that's what we're at, right, Donna? Varroa. Okay, so raise your hand. So everyone knows, well, not everybody knows. I'm making an assumption. Varroa is bad, right? Varroa are the mites that are in the hives that transmit viruses to the bees. These viruses cause your bees to be sick and your colonies to die, right? So there's a lot more to understand. Deformed wing virus, black cell queen virus, sac brood virus, parasitic mite syndrome, acute bee paralysis, Israeli acute paralysis virus, and Kashmir bee virus, to name probably a few, right? So the Varroa is the vector that transmits these things to bees, right? And we know bees drift, right? So we know that Carol's apiary, who has Varroa, right? And my apiary is next to Carol. Her Varroa is going to go from her apiary to my apiary, right? So I know we all think very like this about beekeeping in some ways. Like, these are my hives. This is my property, right? This is what I'm responsible for. But I really encourage people to think like we're all part of Chester County, and we know there's a beehive on every corner of Chester County, right? So we know that bees drift long distances between hives, right? And bees rob hives, right? So your Varroa problem can become your neighbor's Varroa problem, and your neighbor's Varroa problem can become your Varroa problem. And if you got a Varroa problem, what happens to your bees? They die. Now, what constitutes a problem, right? I mean, you can get into the weeds of that, like, because every hive has Varroa. True? Pretty much. I would say every hive, even Ed Sharp's hives, whose queens look out for Varroa and kill Varroa, every hive has Varroa. You know, some handle it better than others, but every single hive has Varroa. Can you tell if a hive has Varroa by looking at your bees? Rarely, until it's too late, right? So I hear this all the time. Like, I do educational events, and people, they don't know who I am, thankfully. They come up to me and they say, I've had bees and they die every year, and I don't think they have Varroa because I don't see Varroa. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, just stop. Just stop. Join the club, please. But anyway, you can't tell a hive is infested with Varroa until it's too late, until you start to see one of these things. Like, if you see parasitic mite syndrome, you'd be like, okay, I got a problem. Or you see a deformed wing virus. Your problem is if you're waiting for this to show up in your hive, your hive's gonna die, right? It's just not gonna make it, more than likely. So every hive has Varroa, and Varroa is bad because Varroa vectors viruses that kills bees. Okay, you already know more than the average beekeeper in Chester County, honestly. Now, what do you do about it? Now, there's generally three ways to approach Varroa. I'm going to ask for a share. No judgment. Believe me, I truly believe that all perspectives make up the big picture. I have my perspective, but I'm okay with someone else having their own perspective too. Let's just talk about it. So there's three ways you could deal with Varroa, right? Number one is you can universally treat, right? I'm going to universally treat my hives every year. I don't care what the mite levels are. I'm just going to treat them, and I'm going to make the Varroa as low as possible, and that's going to be my strategy to manage Varroa. If you do that, raise your hand. Okay, so we're looking at about a third of the people that universally treat their hives. Everyone understand what that means, right? Universal treatment means I'm just going to treat my hives certain times of the year. I don't care what my levels are. I'm just going to treat them. That's my strategy. Strategy number two is I'm going to treat based on a mite threshold, right? So I'm going to take my hive, I'm going to check my Varroa every month, and if my level gets so high, then I'm going to treat my hive with something. Those of you who do think that that's going to be the way you manage your Varroa this year, raise your hand. Okay, so we got a little bit less than universal treatment. Okay, option number three is, I'm going to get there. I'm gonna try to, because I've heard, believe me, I've had lots of discussions with lots of people and try to understand. And I think what it is I'm not gonna treat my bees because I want nature to sort out who's the strongest and who's going to survive, and therefore I'm making the pool of genes better, because let the weak go away and let the strong survive, right? Those who are going to employ that strategy, raise your hand. Oh, come on, none. Those of you who are not brave enough to raise your hand, raise your hand. No, Those of you who have no idea how you're going to manage Varroa this year, raise your hand. Well, we got a lot of people that committed to nothing, right? That's a bad place to be, right? Because if you commit to nothing, what are you going to do? Nothing, right? At least commit to something. I say that to the resident. I was a physician and did academic medicine and worked with residents every night. I know this isn't relevant to bees. I said, please commit to something in the middle of the night. You may be totally wrong. You may be totally wrong, but if you don't commit to something, you don't learn anything, right? Because then you just like do nothing. And then what do you learn from doing nothing? Nothing, right? So you're going to commit to one of three things. You're going to commit to you're going to commit to everyone here is going to commit to one of three things at the end of the day, right? You're going to commit to universally treat your bees. You're going to commit to plus or minus mite levels. You're going to commit to monitor your mites and treat based on threshold, or you're going to commit to natural selection, right? Everyone's going to leave here today with some plan committed in their mind to how they're going to do Varroa, right? That would be a big step forward, right? Because we're going to learn something. If you ask me what I do, I universally treat my hives. And there's reasons not to do that, right? There's reasons not to universally treat your hives. And one of the reasons not to universally treat your hives is what? You can kill your queen with treatment. Every treatment has a toxicity, right? Every treatment has a benefit, for sure, but every treatment has a toxicity. And toxicity depends on what treatment you choose, and we're going to hear about the different treatments in a bit, but some treatments are more toxic than others, right? So, yes, you're exposing your bees to toxicity they wouldn't be exposed to if you did not treat, which could result in queen loss, which could result in hive failure, right? So, hey, shit, I'm sorry. Hey, shucks. I thought I was doing good. The next thing I know, I have a queenless hive that's not laying workers, and I should have never listened to that CCBA. They don't know what they're talking about. Okay. Any other downside to universally treating? Resistance, right? So we're starting to hear about resistance to, especially the Amitraz or Apivar, the synthetic miticides, like Coumaphos used to be used before I was a beekeeper. We don't use Coumaphos anymore because the bees are resistant to it, right? The bees are going to get more resistant the more we use, right? The more antibiotics I prescribe, the more resistance there's going to be, right? The more miticides we use, especially some of the synthetic ones, the more these mites are going to figure out, hey, this might survive, this mite didn't. When it was exposed, this mite continues to breed, and we get a whole population of mites that are not sensitive to whatever miticide we're using. For the most part, the organic treatments, the acids, the oxalic acid, the formic acid, they probably work by a way that more physical. But maybe eventually we get these mites that have exoskeletons that are 3 times thicker than other mites. I don't know, right? So it's possible that even over time, and that you're going to be resistant to the. Now, Chris thinks a lot about bees, so that's why we're here.
You talk about how the mites adapt.
Mm-hmm.
So the bees can adapt to the mites as well. The mites can adapt to our pet stuff. That's why. For bees, I think it's a balance between these things that's important. I think it's important that you let the bees. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be speaking.
Being learning a little bit of how to defend themselves,
as well as doing your best to keep them.
Right. So if you're universally treating, you're not really encouraging the bees to.
No, you're doing the opposite. You're also encouraging poor genetics to continue on instead of having good genetics continue on. Where you're going to defend the bees will be able to defend themselves somewhat. They may not be able to defend themselves all the time, but there'll be less need to do applications. I'm not saying you don't do them, but if you see them and it's bad or you get a high count, yeah, do them. But I'm a big fan of splits and brood breaks.
Speak up. Speak up. Keep going.
Okay. Splits.
We're at church right now. We're talking mites.
The problem is you got honeykeepers. You got beekeepers that are beekeeping for money. Okay, and the money overrides what's good for the bees. That's how I see things. Everybody's different. Okay. That the reason why we're where we're at is because of commercial beekeeping. Because if they didn't rely upon making the almighty dollar, maybe they would have let the bees just go and adapt and get used to it, and we wouldn't be using so much treatments, and we wouldn't have these weak genetics. I'm a person that doesn't like to get. Every time man steps in, we mess things up. So I'm a big person on doing the best you can to let them adapt. And maybe a lot of people will disagree with this, and that's fine. Everybody has their opinions on beekeeping. Everyone does things different ways.
So do you might check and treat based on threshold, or you don't treat at all?
I do splits.
Do splits?
I do splits and brood breaks.
Okay.
If I have to, I'm not worried about my honey intake. I'll pinch a queen just so there's a brood break. I don't care. Let them make a new queen. That's just my version on it. Okay, that's how I look at things. I've been doing it for 5 years. I've lost 2 hives, and that was to starvation because they got robbed in the wintertime or in the fall, and they didn't make it through because my cluster was so small.
Do you mind if I ask you something personal?
Go aheend. Knock yourself
Chris and I go back a little bit, so I think we're okay
Knock
here.
yourself out. Yeah, we're okay. Go ahead.
Do you over your years of beekeeping, which I guess is 5 or 6 now?
It's 5.
5.
Yeah.
Have you ever applied a miticide to your hive?
Yes, I had in the very beginning because I was told to do that, and I used apple bark, and I also used formic, and I lost queens to formic. Okay, and then I realized after I did the formic treatment, when you're doing formic treatments, you don't keep the queen in the brood box. You cage her, put her up in the super, then do your treatment, and then you'd have to worry about the queen getting off by the formic.
So
and after 2 days, you put her back down.
Do you do mite counts on your hives?
At the end of the year.
At the end of the year. So you're relying on IPM basically by brood breaks and splitting.
That's me. Yeah.
To cultural to control your mite levels, but you're not 100% sure it works, but you know you have good winter survival.
I haven't had any problems. But that's me.
No, I mean it's good
and in all fairness, okay, my apiary might be far away from other people's apiaries, okay, and I'm not getting the drifting bees from Carol's hive, okay, but that's where I'm at. That's how and everyone does things differently, and that's fine. You know, you can keep bees the way you think is fit. I'm not an expert, just so you know.
The question was.
Let me put it this way: my mite counts at the end of the year. There are some hives that are fine, and there are some hives that need to be looked at, need to be taken care of. And what I try to do is end of the year, when I'm going into the winter, like October, okay, I'll do an oxalic acid treatment, but I don't do 4. I do 2. I knock them down because in the same sense, you know, you realize you have mites that are there, and the bees have to deal with them. They have to learn how to deal with things, you know. Otherwise, you don't adapt. So I treat them twice, and I haven't had a problem doing that. It worked for me. But that's me. Like I say, I might have an isolated case. My bees may be more hygienic because I've been doing this, and now it's easier for me to take care of them. I don't know. I don't do all the science and data and taking down notes possibly. I just wing things and see how it works. And so far, it's working for me. So that's all I can tell you. Okay, I'm done. Now I'll get off my stool.
No, I mean, this is our club. This isn't my club. This is our club. So I mean,
Everybody does things differently.
It's great to hear the alternative perspective, right, to how to do this. You know, and there, at the end of the day, obviously, Chris committed to a decision path by committing, right? Not because of laziness or not because he just decided. You know, he's thought about it. You know, he's thought about what he's doing, and he understands what he's doing. So therefore, hey, I respect that. You know, I respect that person who sits down, thinks about what they're doing, and can give you a rationale for why they're doing it that way. And that was great, Chris. No, I really appreciate that. I don't agree with it, but I do appreciate it. You know, because I don't think many people are as dedicated to probably what he's doing from a cultural standpoint to make that work. You know what I mean? Like I think. There's probably things that he's doing that he doesn't even know he's doing that makes this work. I'm not sure what they are, but so where was I? So
we're going to talk about the methods.
We're going to talk about the methods. If you decide No, it's good. This is why we're here, right? To be entertained and to learn something. So we're going to talk about if you decide to universally treat your hives, or if you decide to check your mite levels, and if your mite level gets higher than 2%, which is 6 mites in an alcohol wash, or six mites for 300 bees, and you decide that you're going to apply a miticide. We're going to go over the miticides now, right? So that's what we're going to do. And we have different people going over different miticides. So what miticide do you want to hear about first? Brooks miticide first. So whatever Brooke has, we're going to hear about Brooks miticide. Now, we chose people to talk about miticides that they actually use, right? So everyone who talks about whatever miticide they're applying, they use. So feel free at the end of it to question them, and because they're the experts as much as any expert in the club about what miticides they're talking about.
And granted, so I have used, so I'm going to be talking about Amatraz, which is the active ingredient in Apivar strips, not to be confused with Apigard or Apolite Var, because they all have very similar names. So I'm talking about Apivar would be if you're going out to buy it. And it's really easy to use. It's basically a plastic strip, looks like a bookmark. It's got a little flap in it that you just stick in between your frames. You use 2 strips per 5 frames. So for a 10 frame box, that's 2 strips per box. And the way it works is it's coated with a chemical, and the bees have to come in contact with it. So you want it to be in the center of the brood chamber, where it's a high traffic area where they're going to touch it, get it on their bodies, spread it to the other bees. It actually doesn't kill the mites on contact. It paralyzes them. They fall off of the bees and they starve to death. So it needs a long time to work. So you need to leave it in the hive for a minimum of 42 days and a maximum of 56, so 6 to 8 weeks. During that time, you cannot have honey supers on, which is one of the disadvantages, because you do not want this chemical. It's a synthetic chemical, not compatible if you're trying to do an organic operation, and it will get into your honey. Not great. Don't do it. And yes.
So when you said you would put 2 mites, just for the people that are brand new, I'm totally into visual learning.
Yeah.
So where would you put those 2?
So
strips?
I would put it probably, you want it to be about 2 frames apart. So I would put one here and one here. So you want it to be right in the middle, assuming that your brood is right in the center of your hive and not shifted one way or the other. Over the course of the treatment, if you find that your bees are putting a lot of propolis or anything on top of the strips, you may need to scrape them off so that the chemical is more exposed, because again, it works on contact. They have to walk on it and touch each other and spread the treatment. Or if the brood chamber shifts, you should probably move the strips as well.
Thank you.
Yes, no worries. And it should work. So this would probably be a good product to use either in the very early spring before you put any honey supers on, because you need to have these strips out at least 2 weeks before you put the supers on, or in the fall afterwards, after you've taken the supers off. Because versus some of these other treatments, one of the advantages of this, in spite of it being synthetic and a chemical, and some people are uneasy about that, there are no temperature requirements. So you can use it when it's very cold out, you can use it when it's very hot out. It doesn't vaporize or anything, and so it should work at any time of the year. So that's about it for that one. I don't know who's going next.
Which is awesome, because that's all the stuff I had on here too.
Oh, cool.
With some subtle differences, actually. So I'm actually talking about formic acid. It's Mite Quick Strips and Formic Pro. The Formic Pro is actually a newer formulation that is 14 or 21 days, depending on how you want to treat. The Mite Quick Strips are 7 or 21 days. It is an organic acid. It shows up naturally in your honey either way. Unlike with the Apivar, the functional method is attacking the mites in the brood comb. So it's actually under the caps. It targets their reproduction, their reproductive cycle. It does have very strict temperature limits of 50 to 85 degrees. If the weather gets above 85 in the first 3 or 4 days of that treatment, you will kill your bees. It is fairly aggressive, like it vaporizes itself. It's in pads about yay big, and you put them on like this in your brood box. So right in the middle of your brood box, it's 1 pad per pot ready to bees. Brooks was a lot better of a presentation with a lot more thorough details than mine, but yeah, happy to talk about it, answer any questions as well.
Are those, I thought I read in the directions that you just leave them on, you don't have to take them off at the end of the direction.
You can. So a big, strong hive will absolutely kind of eat through the pads and clean them away just like anything else that's in the hive. A weaker hive won't, and you'll end up with these pads still in there. You can keep them on with honey supers, which is the lovely thing about the Formic. But yeah.
And then I think I read that you can actually compost them.
They are compostable, yes. Now, that said, it's also anytime you're dealing with them, wear rubber gloves that you're going to throw away. Don't use your lovely leather gloves because it is, in fact, acid. If you're putting it on and it's kind of warm out, you will feel it when you're breathing. So respirators also sometimes recommended. I don't do that, but that's my choice. Yeah. And it's just like a pad. It's an acid impregnated pad that you can put on top, and they're wrapped in paper or plastic. It vaporizes. It evaporates into the hive, and then that acid that's in the air now in there actually penetrates in through the brood cappings. Then because then it evaporates way too quickly, and the acid levels in the air will spike too much.
So there's 2 ways you can. I'm sorry,
Go for it.
Leave behind you, so you may have answered this. But there's for Formic or Mite Away Quick Strip, you can either use 1 pad or 2 pads.
Yep.
And if the 1 pad is a treatment, and then 2 weeks later you put 1 pad, and the 2 pads at one time at once, and the toxicity goes down if you use the 1 pad versus the 2 pad, but your effectiveness at the 1 pad doesn't get your brood stuff underneath your brood capping. So, but it basically works by, as Chris said, just by just off gassing. Now, with that said, you open the packet of Formic, there's a papery thing that's around leave that on, right? Because otherwise you're gonna off gas really quickly. You're gonna kill your hive. So with all these methods, please take a moment to read the package insert before you apply to your hive. I'm guilty of not doing that too, but it's all in there, right?
Yeah, and the efficacy of the formic acid is something like up to 98% at this point still. And as you mentioned earlier, there's no sign of resistance yet with the acid.
Questions about Formic? Yes.
If we can't predict the weather, the temperature suddenly unsafe to get above 85 degrees, what do you do?
I would take them out.
But the first
if it, I mean, like the first 3 days.
The first 3 days is really
once you get past that, it becomes less effective anyway. Like the acid levels are coming down. But if I put them in today and then tomorrow it was 90 degrees, I would absolutely take them out.
So can I ask a stupid question? If you don't want it to be above what you did,
85.
85.
what difference does it provide?
It's a tough one, because you recommend doing it in July.
Honey safe.
Why July is because July is the time when you start to see an increase in your mite levels, and you're just trying to knock them down. But you're right, trying to find a 3-day window in July that the temperature. There's usually 1 or 2 windows in July where the temperatures will work for Formic. Yeah. So with that said, the 3 days is the important window. So if the first 3 days it looks okay, you're probably okay, and you're probably. I can't say this because I don't do a 1 pad, but I assume the 1 pad risk is a little bit smaller than the 2 pad risk too, potentially, right? Yeah. So the one thing about all these treatments is most of the mites are going to, especially with Formic or all of them, they're going to be on the nurse bees. They're going to be near the brood. So if you have a stack that's like 5 high without a queen excluder, and you got brood all the way through that stack, you got to think about that before you start treating. You probably want to get your brood down to a box or 2 if you're running without a queen excluder.
So
that's not going to be in the package insert, but just common sense a little bit.
The Formic instructions actually cover that a bit as well, which is that if your brood nest moves during treatment, chase them. Move your treatment. You do need to keep the treatment around the brood.
You could tell when the last time I read the Formic insert.
I read it 3 weeks ago. I mean, I'm going to inspect them again next weekend, right? Like, I'm not in there like every other day. I'm in there like every week at that point. And I'm going to move it if they do move much, but
Cool.
2 weeks. It's 14 days. Or the Mite Away quick strips are 1 week.
Yeah, they're slightly different, the Formic Pro and the Mite Away quick strips, you know,
Yep.
so just read the insert, but it's basically 2 weeks or 10 days. Charlie's doing oxalic. Here's your mic, Charlie.
All right, this is a little show and tell.
to talk about the cheapest medications for the most expensive to deliver.
Oxalic is the cheapest once you get the equipment. It's pennies a treatment. It, like formic, is a organic acid. The difference being that it does not penetrate the brood cappings. So ideally, the time to do it is when you're broodless. The best time recommended is late fall to get ready for winter, say between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It does have a low temperature, actually. You're supposed to not use it below 37 degrees, according to the literature. Just because the bees cluster together and the vapor will not penetrate the cluster when it's done. It is, since it doesn't penetrate the brood cappings, 80 to 85% of the Varroa are under those cappings. So if you do it while you have brood, you're not able to easily do it in one treatment. They recommend doing it in treatments over a 12-day period, which would cover the capped brood duration. So you could do it day 1, day 6, day 12. Part of the problem with that is that between the treatments, you have Varroa that leave the cappings and go into brood and get capped before you reach the next treatment. But it is a good method to knock things down if you find that you have high mite numbers. The couple different devices, a couple different methods of application. This is the Verox. It's the standard. I think this is one of the first ones that came out. You use a gram per box. A gram is equal to roughly 1 level quarter tablespoon.
Did you say one box?
One brood box. Now you can use it. It's either 8 or 10. If you're doing nukes, it's half of that. Well, you're doing brood. So, well, if you okay, so if you had 3 mediums, would be the equivalent of two large brood boxes. Oh God, I'm getting tongue-tied. It does require power. That there's multiple ways. One of them is a car battery. Heating it does take a lot of energy. So I have an old car battery. Doesn't have to be a great one. This here will do 10 or 12 hives. There's another method, which is kind of neat. This is a plug-in version, which you can use on an extension cord. You put the same amount of oxalic in here, and it flows it through a hole. Now, what you have to do, you have to make sure that you seal up your hive. I usually seal it up. Seal up the hive. Put your acid in there. Put it in the entrance. Seal it up with foam or something, rags. You heat it. It usually takes anywhere from 2.5 to 4 minutes. You really have to time it yourself. Just do it out the air one time to get an idea. And as you do more hives, the time will tend to get a little longer as the battery completes.
Charlie, the oxalic acid.
Yes. Yes.
And it's random. It's a powder.
Well, there is
There's actually three things. There's powder, which most people would use. Now they have a product called EasyOx, which is a pellet, like a little tablet, which is 1 gram tablets, so you don't have to worry about measuring it. And there's also another one, which is a time-released impregnated strip, which is still not released. It's been approved by the EPA, but they're waiting on. Now that's not actually been approved. But the Varroa is, they're awaiting label changes. With the EPA, the label is the law. So they're very critical about exactly what it says. So they had some changes, and it's still being held up for that. But it's supposed to be here this year. So the nice part about that is that you can put that in for 42 to 56 days, just like the Apivar. And
so I'm trying to wrap my head when you put it and you heat it,
Mhm.
it's still in that dry pellet form. You're not adding no water to make it.
No, what it does, yeah, it vaporizes. It actually sublimates. It doesn't melt. It just goes from solid to gas. Okay, and it's in the gaseous form for a few minutes, and then it recrystallizes all over everything. So they really don't know the reason why it kills the mites, but they assume, they theorize that it's the mites have a sticky pad on the bottom of their feet, and they believe that that's their method of transfer, but they really don't have a proven method. Now, though it does not kill the bees, it is harmful to the bees. You know, so it's not something that's meant to use over and over and over again. It will harm your bees in time. The other method, there is a dribble method. Dribble method, you normally, you can either mix the oxalic acid with a 1-to-1 sugar syrup or a glycerin. You take and put it in a syringe. You can use a 50 milliliters in a syringe, and it takes a little practice. You use a syringe and you just try it a couple of times and see. You can see how much you're expending, and what you would do is you spray it down on top of the bees. You don't put it on the top bars. So if there's bees here, you spray here, spray here, spray here, or dribble there. You're only supposed to use no more than 50 milliliters in your hive. There's also a method you can actually, you're able to spray a oxalic solution onto a package. And I did talk about the, let me answer questions. I know I missed them. No. Which brings up another point. One of the reasons I don't want to show it is because oxalic acid vapor is very, very, it's like chlorine. You know, the formic, it's tough on the nose. The oxalic acid vapor actually will harm your lungs. And if they recommend using a respirator with an acid vapor cartridge on. If you are like some people where you figure, well, I'll just stand downwind. Hope that wind doesn't change, because I can tell you for a fact that it'll gag you. They also recommend wearing chemical resistant gloves and eye protection. You put either 1 or 2 grams, depending on how many brood boxes you have, and you just clip it onto the battery and time it. Usually takes between 2.5 and 4 minutes for it to completely vaporize. Unhook it at whatever the time would be, 4 minutes. Leave it sitting there for 2 minutes, still sealed up. After 2 minutes, you can take the probe out and go on to another one. Just take it out and seal it back up. You want to leave the box sealed up for a total of 10 minutes. The I've never used this. Great new tool. You basically have a little hole in the box. You put it in and you fire away. Seal it up, leave it sit for 10 minutes. Yes, because you've used it.
I was just bought that 30 foot online. These things are pretty damn expensive. That thing was $1.49. And the reason I got 12 online and not the cables is because I have a jackfruit battery. And that plugs right into my 300-watt battery and that's fine. This company makes battery models. So everything but Ryobi was the thing I'm older working on, which is what I have. So I didn't want to wait, so I bought the plug-in, but they made the wall battery, and the battery, and something else battery, and Ryobi's all the way. It's amazing. For that, it was $195, which is still really good, And the guy's really nice. I got one. I used it the first day, and I can attest to the set because I hadn't had my stuff on yet, and the thing was sleeping. And I called the guy, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He's like you said, you want another farm, you can't put it together. Send it back to me, and I'll do it. But I was able to get it together, and I gave the leftover questions to our language, but he could take his own something about it. But the company, the customer service is amazing for that. If anybody wants to link, I can send it to you.
All right. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a swarm.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of days later, there's no food yet.
Now there is another option if you, for brood. Something I never saw is a frame cage. You can actually put your queen in a frame in your box and let it go broodless with the queen in there. So the only brood you'll have is on that one frame. You can then take that frame out and do a vaporization and get all your mites. It will kill 90-some% of the mites. That's just another idea. Well, no, you can move it to another hive. Well, it's full of brood, or it's full of Varroa. So yeah, you would probably get rid of that. Yeah, you could do that. All right.
No research out that instead of this two branch for double bond or like actually that paperwork says that.
Now,
it says it's not true yet.
Yeah, that's the stickler is the label is the law by the EPA. Now, if you go to Randy Oliver's website, Scientific Beekeeping, he does all the research. He's doing it under an experimental permit. And he's got great ideas and great methods, but they're not yet officially approved. So I guess as a club, we can't present them. We won't. That's correct. Like I said, the other thing I didn't mention is you are allowed to leave your supers on. Originally, that wasn't the case, but that did come about, I think, in 22.
There's a paperwork behind these from 2017, and that's the admin pointed out, was that they now say that says you can't leave it on, but the admin was right, so I was right, now you can.
Yeah, you can leave it on. Yes.
Is that
No, actually, it's a question of whether or not you use the equivalent amounts. Is that what you're asking? It is the same. The reason for the glycerin is the sugar water. The bees will ingest the sugar water, so they're also ingesting the oxalic acid. They do not like glycerin. The glycerin does stay on. It does adhere to them a little bit better than the sugar water. I really don't know. Yeah. Well, they're both a one-time thing, as Carol says. Just lost it. I'm sorry.
Is oxalic, no, is glycerin and the sugar water comparable, interchangeable? Okay.
Well, the concentrations that you mix them are not the same. I do not have the table for them. If you go to scientificbeekeeping.com, he does have lists that show all the it may be. I don't know. Actually, I do have it. They also recommend that you don't make any more than you're going to use because it doesn't store well. If you see that it's starting to get cloudy, it's shot. Throw it out. Yeah, it is super cheap. Okay. Yeah, Jeff.
One of the ways to deal with having resistance to this is to not use the same one all over and over again. Can you do half a bar one time of the year and oxalic another time?
Actually, that's the way you want to do it. You don't want to use the same treatment. You want to use different treatments. Use Apivar, use Formic, use oxalic to minimize resistance to it. And some of them you can use, like the Formic has a temperature, but it does go under cappings. The oxalic doesn't go under the cappings unless well, actually it doesn't go under the cappings, but if you use the extended release, which is coming out, that will kill any of the mites or potentially kill the mites between when they come out of the brood and go back in. But yeah, you want to mix it up.
So George, I actually downloaded a paper. But
Did you go to that Robin Underwood organic beekeeping management class? Was that you? Okay. So she gave us a pamphlet. It was like 4 pages. I tried to scan it. It all came up as page 1, but I'm going to put it on the website. It goes through the different times of the year that she recommends doing the different treatments and the temperatures. It's great. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it up on the monitor today, but I can put it on the website. Would anybody be interested in seeing that? I'll make sure I find a way to get it up there.
So I use the Apigard for Apigard, and you can buy the big tub if you have a bunch of hives. You can also get them in small little single dose things where you peel the things off. It's organic. It's a gel, and we can open this up later. You can smell it and see it.
Where'd you get the order?
And it expires. You got 2 years to use this up. And I put on top of the hive with a spacer. The bees have to go get at it. They drag it out of the hive. You put the gel on it. If you don't have the single packet things, you got this. You put on like an index card on top of the hive. You need to put a shim on there, like 1 or 2 inch size shim, so the bees can get at it. You can't just squish it between your brood boxes. They drag it out of the hive. They don't like the smell. And it's also how fast it outgasses does depend on the temperature. Say like today, you can use the full dose, and then 2 weeks later, you do another full dose of 50 milliliters. It comes with a syringe. You suck it up from this into the syringe, and then just put it onto the card. Once you get a sense of how much that is, you can just use your hive tool and put it on the card. 2 weeks later, you do another dose because it doesn't kill the mites under the cappings. So you've got to do it twice. If it's hotter, what I do is I use half dose. That's approved. You can do 25, and then a week later, so 2 weeks later, do another 25. And then if you want to, another week after that, put another 25 on. And it's okay for nukes. it's really small nuke, you might want to use about 12 instead of 50. I do 25 on my nukes, which usually tend to be larger. It's organic, so I don't worry about. I do all mediums, and it's hard to keep track of what frames were treated and which ones weren't. And I don't worry about that because it's organic and it's already in honey, and it's going to be the next year before there's possibly honey put out.
Yeah, I'm just saying, is that a little tin can or is it something?
Yeah, you can buy a little applicator. You peel the label off, leave it in the. You do need to put the shim on.
And so what's the next?
The same thing, just a big dose of it. They'll treat a whole bunch of hives. The first time I did it between the brood boxes with a shim, and they then put all kind of burr comb in there and made a mess. I now put on top of that and let it go down at the bottom. It's good to close off the bottom. That's what I say. The front should be fully open, no entrance reducers. Don't look inside. It's time with 25%. Other ingredients 75%. So it's got to be a slow release. So yeah, that was it.
Green drum coat.
Oh, yeah.
Cultural method, that's really weird. Great genetic selection, all. What's a group break? Great. So a group break is basically when you stop.
I'm sorry,
Sure, no, thank you. So the question is, we talked about group breaks, given that, what the group break, why is that good? The mites are reproducing in the group, right? So the idea of a group break is to stop the queen from laying, or the hive to get clean, let's say, form, or you make a split, or you take the queen, or some reason why over a 3-week period, there's no brood being made in that hive, right? And therefore, all the mites that have no brood going, so they're all outside of the group, and then you get bees that are hygienic, that sort of kill or bite or get rid of the mites themselves. And the mites don't have any way to take that, because they can't want to put food. Right, so there's a natural brood rate which is forming, right? So one of the advantages of the forming is that, the queen takes off, right? With one piece, and that hive left here is queen until it gets into queen. So that's the natural brood rate, right? The other thing is you can make it split, you can artificially make it get the queen out and leave that hive queenless. And that's the brood rate. Or you put the queen in the cage and not let her like grab the whole hive, and that's the brood rate. So you're just trying to stop the reproduction of the mites and give all the mites outside of the group. The bees can, go attack. Yeah, because the brood cycle is 3 weeks, right? And the reproduction cycle of the mites is fast enough to don't like that location. No, the mites will die off, but they don't have a chance to reproduce. So they're outside of the cabin, so the bees consume them or groom them or whatever they do to get rid of them. It's a natural rate of population. They give the bees an opportunity to bring it. Yeah. And there's a threshold for sure, right? I mean, there's a level of how sick is sick, right? We all carry some disease usually, right? But if our virus load or our pathogen load stays below a certain level, we continue to exist, right? Assuming that we have healthy immune systems and things like that, right? But if that pathogen level gets above our ability of our bodies to fight it off, then we crank, right? And the same way with growth, right? There's a certain level of growth in time. If the viral time stays above a certain level, then your hive doesn't get sick, right? Assuming it's healthy. And that's kind of you never really, even the treatments never really get your mite levels to 0. You're just trying to put them below whatever that threshold is. And that threshold moves through the years too, right? When I started with the threshold was like 3 or 5% of mites. Like you don't see a hive until your mite wash was 9 or 12. And then it kind of
over 1%. Now it's 2%. So that threshold level sort of moves around because you never expect that no mites in the hive. It's just not good. You don't need it. So food bait is one way to interrupt the reproduction of the mite, because once the mites are reproduced in the hive at a certain level, you're going to go with this. You know, you can test your, like I did 10 mite bosses last week, right? At an age of 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, whatever they were. Some of it's higher than 2. Most were 0 and 1. So that could change. I hope it doesn't. But just because you get one mite boss is 0 or 1, and you check next month, it may be 0 or 1, but it also may be 8. And then that 8 sort of turns to 20. And so if you give a good break, it's at 1. It doesn't have the chance. The mite don't have a chance to continue to go up and kind of stay at that level. It also allows the bees the opportunity to groom and knock them down a little bit. But that's what you're trying to do. Treatments are not like getting rid of all the mites in the hive. It's making a level where your virus levels aren't out of control. I hope I'm making sense. I'm probably not.
It's also virus levels. It's also virus levels, but you also have to worry about as the mites are feeding on your bees, they're lowering the immune system of your bees and makes them more vulnerable to the virus load. So it's a two-phase system. More mites, more virus. More mites, lower immune systems. And then it's the combination of the two. So you're basically keeping things in check by keeping the populations down.
Yeah, I have a question about the brood break method. Is it recommended, or for anybody who has used this method before, do you do any kind of a powdered sugar dusting to help facilitate or to encourage the bee hygienic behavior during the brood break? Yeah, during the brood break, just to try to facilitate more increased grooming.
Powdered sugar is basically during the brood break, right? But there's no brood. You basically dust your bees with powdered sugar, and that dusting of the bees don't like, so they're going to brood. Whatever mites are attached to the bees, they're going to be broomed out because they're trying to get the sugar out of the bees. So it's a grooming assistant, really, to getting the Varroa off the bees. People think that, you do it in the summer, it's humid, it may not work because of the humidity, and how effective is it? But at the end of the day, that toxicity is low, so we're proud of it.
Paul, was it you that brought up about the drone breeding cone? So another thing you can do is just use a medium frame. Just put a medium frame in your deep box, and they build drone on the bottom of that. Rather than freezing your frame, you just cut that off, light up your fire pit, get rid of it. Give it to your chickens. Give it to your friends' chickens.
There's all kinds of other complementary, I guess you could say, treatments out there for Varroa, and you can find a lot of them on YouTube and online. I'm not going to, most of them are probably have relatively low toxicity, right? Because you have to get toxicity. If you're going to do that, I would just recommend just checking by level, right? That's the best way to know whether or not you're effective or not. Checking by level.
If it's 3 mice per 300 bees, and you spray your concoction of whatever you're on, and next month you still have a level of 3 per 300 bees, yeah, that's great. Whether or not that's because whatever you sprayed on it, I don't know, but that's a good outcome, right? So I'm not anti-complimentary at all, but as a club, we can only say what's approved, effective wise. So I'd love to talk. So more questions, the better. And this isn't on my time. This is on your time. So Donna can't shut me up. Yes.
Yeah. Well, why don't you do a brood break and then turn around and zap them with like an oxalic acid treatment?
Yeah. No, you could do that. That's I think Charlie said that you give it a brood break, and therefore there's nothing underneath the cappings, and then either you vaporize or you can dribble, right? Either. You can dribble in the summer. We don't think about dribbling. We always dribble in the winter. But if you're truly broodless, a dribble, as far as I know, is just effective as a vaporization. So if you don't own a vaporizer, but you could still apply oxalic by dribbling it, and I believe be equally as effective in that scenario. So yes, and sometimes, and we don't do it. I don't do it, but I'm like, oh, I got to watch my cursing because we do have kids in the audience. Shucks, my hive's queenless. There's no brood. I don't know if I'm queen right. Why don't I just dribble that hive? I don't know why I don't, because I'm lazy and I don't feel like doing it. But right, I mean, there you go. There's a perfect hive that you could dribble, get all the mites down, and be done with it for the year, right? If you wanted to. But I don't.
If you catch a swarm,
Yeah,
that's an opportune time to do an oxalic acid treatment before they start laying. Because then, if they're coming to you, you caught the swarm, it has mites. They haven't even started laying. Just like you're talking about doing the brood break and doing your oxalic treatment, a swarm basically is a brood break. So you catch a swarm, treat them.
and just remember one other thing, not to put fear into anybody's hearts. And Frank's still around here. Is Frank gone? No, Frank's still here. Sorry, don't listen, Frank. Some of the bees that come up from the south are a little bit ahead of the bees that come up in the north, right? Early on. So, and packages do come up with mites for the most part. So, just if you have a new hive, don't assume that new hive doesn't have mites in it because of whatever reason. The only way to know if you don't have mites is to check for mites. And I don't know if they're at higher risk or not, but they're clearly at risk, even if it was started as a package, because mites do come with packages. I don't know if the package that you bring up are treated or not, Frank, beforehand. I don't know. Some people do.
Microphone, please.
Who's talking?
Frank is. I put Frank on the spot a little bit tonight, so I want Frank to respond.
That doesn't amplify. That just puts you on the base.
Most of the bees that come off the salad have been treated most of the demand. But really, everybody is those efforts next month or 6 weeks.
Here, Mark.
Different
Most of the bees up here are at risk in the next six weeks or so, when the population of bees starts to decline, but the population of mites does not. All those treatments are great. My favorite is Mite Away Quick Strips. The formic acid in the full dose, nothing kills mites like formic acid in the full. So like if you're not killing mites, mites are killing bees. A 7-day treatment of Mite Away Quick Strips, 2 pads, will kill 99% of the mites, including the mites under the cappings. It's the only treatment. Formic acid is the only treatment that does that. The other ones are great. They'll kill mites, but they'll be more labor intensive if you want to do oxalic acid every 5 days for the next 25 days, or APA-VAR for 42 to 56 days, knowing that you're not going to have honey supers on in that time, and the downsides of synthetic miticides, knowing that there's a tolerance level and a resistance level, and depending on how it's used, the resistance increases. The thymol's great. 2 weeks for a treatment, and you have to face it.
I'm a formic user too. It has the highest toxicity for sure on the bees and on the queen, I would say. Especially when it's used appropriately, but it's highly effective.
Nothing kills mites like that.
Nothing kills mites or bees as well as formic.
Yeah, and usually you see a setback in your bees, right? Like you might see a setback for 3 weeks.
Right.
But maybe they were the weak bees anyway. They were the ones that were already susceptible.
For those
3 weeks later, your brood looks amazing.
For those of you who choose formic, if you look 3 weeks after you apply formic, you're going to think, oh my goodness, what did I just do? If you come back 3 weeks later, your hive's going to look. So there is that setback that you get with formic, that you just have to take a deep breath.
But southern bees that are coming up from the south,
I didn't know if they were unique.
Yeah, they're treated.
Okay. Other questions about mites or pet mite? This was a great discussion today. I have to say, we heard from a bunch of club members. We heard from Chris. We heard from Frank. Personally, I'm a universal treatment guy, so I treat July, September, and December. So I use Formic in July. I use either Apogard or Aprovar in September, and then I do Dribble in December. One could easily say that's over treatment, and I would clearly probably own that piece of it, that I'm over treating my bees. My winter survival. Generally, if you effectively treat for mites, your winter loss should be about 10%. Honestly, if you have, so whatever methods that and that's 10% doesn't mean much if you have 3 hives in your backyard, but generally it's about 10% if you effectively manage mites over time.
George, we need to move on.
I have one more question. We have to get the question in the back.
Microphone, please.
Apogard or Aprovar. Whether or not you're going to choose the synthetic versus organic. When I mentioned my September treatment, my personal September treatment, I said Apogard or Aprovar. I guess that just depends on the year. Some years I use Apogard, some years I use Aprovar because I'm trying to use as little Aprovar as possible just because of resistance, but one half dozen I'd love. I like Formic in July, but it's a little bit of a hassle to try to figure out what 3 days to put it on your hive. And you have to be okay with some queen loss because you're going to have some queen loss. Oxalic Dribble in December is a total no-brainer, honestly, except for if you just don't want to open up your hive and dribble oxalic on it, honestly. I just think that knocking your mite levels down to nothing before winter occurs, so they come out of spring without very little mites, to me is a no-brainer in it. So anyway, no, thanks. I thank everybody who contributed. Thank you to Chris, for sure. Thank you to Frank, and thanks for everybody to listening to that. And this is not the end discussion on this, right? So please, either join Bee Chat on Friday night, comment on the forum, ask your neighbor, reach out. So you're committed to what you're going to do, and you'll learn from it. Don't be uncommitted because then you'll do nothing and nothing will happen. Thanks. I'll just go back. Oh yeah, I'm out.
So don't go away because if anybody brought frames, if we have time, we want to do the wax demonstration.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Who went on the Hive Hop? For those of you that didn't, here's a little tribute to the Hive Hop. So here comes the waterbed. I mean the bus. If anybody was on that bus, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It was incredible. The bus's seat, the bus driver's seat, it's like he had a spring under his seat or something. It was crazy. All right, so here's us was it Mike Emery? Is that his last name? Mike Emerson. So this is Mike Emerson's place where we all met in his gigantic driveway and hopped on the bus. And you can't see the bus driver's face, but he was smiling. Gene Miller's apiary and backyard. I had heard Monica wanted to do a scavenger hunt on our road trip, but never in a million years did I expect this. Find the beekeeper. Sorry, we've gone surfing. This was actually the sign on the door of the first apiary we went to. So go to the next. We all stood there. We're like, is that Gene? Is that Gene? Hey, are you Gene? Hey, where is the lady who lives? Is Gene Miller here today? Because I wouldn't meet her. So Gene had a couple hives out front. Monica did a great job going, okay, let's get people talking. What do you see? The grass is too high. Meanwhile, there's nobody here to yell at me. I'm going to walk around this lady's property and see what she's got going on. So I walked into the backyard, and in her backyard, she had a sanctuary. It was absolutely beautiful, just flowers and gardens. And I was so overwhelmed by all that. I think I forgot to snap a picture. So I don't have a picture of it, but the backyard was definitely something to remember. From there, we went to Lynn Orrell's apiary and sanctuary. And Lynn I've been there before this. I gave everybody one page to just do this really quick. This does not do it justice. Lynn's backyard was amazing. She's got chickens, she's got roosters, she's got chicken walls. Like, to protect her from the fox, she had this little tunnel where the chickens could just roam all over her backyard from spot to spot. She had horizontal hives. She had keepers hives, dado hives. She had regular long stalk hives. Was there any?
She said she has every hive that they ever made.
She has every hive ever made. She's got gardens. She's got, it was absolutely amazing. And it's hard to see the pictures. Right after Lynn's, Monica's like, it's time to drink. So we went outside in front of the neighbor. I know why we're sitting in front of the neighbor's yard. The bee's knees. So wait, isn't this a bee's knees they're giving us? And in this picture, it's amazing what you see when you do these presentations, and you're just like, what's going on in this picture behind me? So if you go to the next frame, there's a little bit of trick happening in the middle of the picture. There's Monica, there's her husband saying, Lori, give me another drink, and Lori hooking him up. Anyway, that was fun. Then we went to Tom McKinney's. And this is the reason for safety equipment, because this is where everybody got bit. I live on down 352, and these hives, you can see them from the road. I have for 5 years now have been wondering who owns this property or whose hives these were, and I finally got to meet the guy. So he opened up a horizontal hive. He did a demo-ray demonstration for us.
7 months.
Oh, Tom's here? There he is. Yeah. Yeah, he did an awesome job showing us inside his hives, and you can tell he's very excited. And he had a table of food and coffee set up for us, not knowing that Monica fed us drinks and donuts right before. So we all got there. We're like, oh, there's more food. So good. He's trying to sober us up. Yeah. Then we went to Mark Meters. Wait, Meadows. Wait, where are we? Yep, Monica's driveway. Yep, that really happened. We didn't get off the bus, but this is what we saw. And I did a little red and green background for you. So her hives are absolutely beautiful. And why did this happen? Faulty GPS, incompetent driver? Nope, pretty sure it was organizer having too much fun. The whole time I'm going, Monica, I don't think this is Mark's way to his house. Mark, no, oh, you put your little symbol on there. So this is Mark's property. And the first thing you notice when you walk in are these funny looking hives. And you're like, wait, what are those? What? He had rabbit cages. So I put a little picture of rabbits up there. He did a demonstration of his flow hive up in the top right. I didn't actually see this. Somebody gave me this picture. Did you do a demonstration?
Yeah.
I was just walking all over your property. I was so amazed. I'm like, look at this, look at this, look at this. He had swings. He had piles of wood that looked like beehives. It was so cool. So Mark, in his 1 acre property, had a lot going on as well. It was pretty awesome. Then we went to Joseph's apiary, and if you were there, you know what I mean. And you can't even see it, but there's an army truck camouflaged by grass right here, because yes, that's what we saw on his lawn. And we're like, what's that? Don't you worry about that.
I have 3 hives only, and then everyone was amazed because of the brood minders, and so newbies wanted to talk about the brood minders.
Yeah. So, but he had a dado hive, or now a keeper's hive. Maybe you can comment, George. But he had a fountain in front of it, and I was trying to get him to say, where do you sit to work that hive? Because you've got a little fountain right in front of it. I'm not sure how you work that hive. Huh? Just sit in the water in the summertime? And then finally we finished up at Mike Emerson's and Gerald's apiary, honey kitchen, and backyard. Now, I think by the time I got there, I was so exhausted. I didn't take a lot of pictures, so I was on email with forget the guy's name, Jeff Chambers maybe, and Jeff gave me a couple pictures of the 10. He's here?
That's here.
Thank you, Jeff, for sending those pictures. That was you, right? Yeah. He gave me the tent picture and the picture of Mike cooking. And then I didn't get a better picture of his honey kitchen, but Mike's honey kitchen was amazing. It was a shed outside and it had everything. And I wanted to also do a presentation on the different ways that people store frames. I might save that for a later meeting, but there's a little example of Mike's there.
I have to jump in on this.
Yeah.
The day before, my husband and I delivered food, drinks, whatever, to the after party, right? And his wife, Cheryl, yelled, "Storm!" And it was storming 1, 2, 5, 6, just in it 3 days before. Like, I can't believe it. So we're watching this massive and he picks up 2 metal heavy shovels and starts hanging, clanging. He walks out there 10 minutes, every one of those bees covered the front of that hive and went back in. It was crazy cool. So we had that hanging.
So Lynn did a demonstration on tanging, and yeah, that's what she's describing now. So I don't know who else was involved, but the CCBA wants to thank everybody, the apiary owners, participants, and everybody that made this a special day. And a very special thank you to this amazing woman, Monica McDowell.
Entertainment. And that was an awesome Hive Hop. It was super cool.
No one
Now-
thought, when other clubs heard that we were renting a bus with the 30 beekeepers on a bus and driving around, they said, oh, that's so cool. So that's thanks to Monica, yes.
We did lose a person from seasickness. She had to hop out and then Ubered out. And then one thing that was interesting was the distance. We were on the bus a long time, right? And from one, place A to B to C. But you can only do what you can do with the volunteers that offered up the apiary. So, you take what you can get. So maybe if we do this, and hopefully we will do it again, we can get clusters and it can be like hit a couple more in a tighter spot or something. Aaron.
I will say the one thing that was very nice about the bus is we had lots of really great conversations with each other. We talked about what people were doing, what their needs. We were able to recap what we saw in the houses.
Right.
So it was a lot of driving, but it still served a really great purpose.
Awesome.
Beyond
Beyond. That's right. You didn't have to. And also we had trivia and we had games and prizes. And CCD. Someone, you know what it means? Colonial collapse disease. And my husband's like, Catherine, Christian doctor. And I'm like, no, honey, bees. So anyway, you get to know people better more intimately. It was really fun. And we really did not drink that much. No, really. So now our next event is not the meeting because we're going to have the summer picnic. I've never been on a summer picnic because I always work retail, but most of you here have. And as you know, I'm going to need some volunteers. And already this morning, we got a lot of things hooked up, but it is Saturday, July 13th at the East Goshen Township. There'll be a lot of stuff on our CCBA website and what pavilion it is. We're going to have games and funds and crafts and water balloon fight. And we're going to get tours, okay? So anyway, it'll be fun, but come and see. And I want to add one thing. So one of the meeting topic suggestions was, can we get some examples of drinks with honey? So I talked to Monica about this and I said, why don't we make this at the summer picnic? Why don't we put it out there? We'll put out an email and remind everybody, hey, either bring your recipe or if you can bring an example of your recipe, bring some drinks with you. But anything that you make with honey, with or without alcohol, bring the recipe, bring a sample, bring enough to share. And bring it to the summer picnic. Yeah. We can price you up. We can do it like we can do a little summer competition. And if you want to do something with food, we can do honey and food as well. Yeah.
This is a family event, right? That's the intent.
It is. It's really kid friendly.
Whoever.
Yeah. And all are welcome. Dogs. Well, can you have them at the park? I don't know about that one. I don't know. Be right. So this is not related to this, but the meetings when we all come here. Does someone want to volunteer that comes to every meeting in the morning early? And that I don't like the box with the names and it's just a mess. So someone think about that and we can maybe clean that up. Is that okay to say? Okay, I think that's all I got.